Well, this week for me, it's been all about the podcast, all about the podcast, all about the podcast, all about the podcast.
I love heavens. I love it too.
I don't know why it's so good, but it's just like really, really, I don't know, life affirming in some way.
Yes, it's fun. It's fun. Listen to us laugh. We love
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was a very bad singing rendition. I thought I was going wrong about the second time round. Then I thought, no, I'm in the groove now. I'm going to keep going one more time. Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. Gotta take it on my way. Gotta take it on. Okay, so Judith, what have you been up to this week then?
Well, let me think. I haven't been up to a lot particularly. I wanted to share with you 2 or 3 nice little things. I don't know about where you are today, Nicola, but the weather is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? As I look out of my window, I've got bright sunny and blue skies. I mean, so un-Christmassy, it's not true.
Yeah, but it was a bit cold, wasn't it? So it's getting more Christmassy as it gets cold.
Oh, no. When I went out the night before last, which I think was the last time I've been out, it was 13 degrees. Me and my family sat on the River Thames, outside after dark, having a drink.
Oh, that's mental, isn't it? That's one of the things I don't like about England. The weather's always wrong at the wrong time.
Well, I don't think it always used to be like that, and I'm not going to get into global warming because that's not my thing at all. But it's just all rather random. But I love sunshine so much, so actually it just makes me very cheerful to look out of the window and enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I'd like a sunshine most of the year, and then just as it's getting the 2 weeks before Christmas, I'd like it getting frostier and then snowing over Christmas, and then immediately reverting back to sunshine.
I remember when we were younger, we always hoped for snow on Christmas Day. I think it only happened about once. I remember actually on QI hearing that how many times did it rain on Christmas Day in the whole, what do you call 100 years?
A century.
Yes, in the whole century. There you go. In the whole century, beginning with 1900 to 2000, it only snowed on Christmas Day 3 times.
Oh, very interesting. That's one of the things I like about all those fascinating facts. So, yes, anything else then? Where were you going? What were you doing sitting by the Thames? Were you going to the carols, weren't you?
We will, but I'm going to tell you about that another time.
Oh, right.
But what I was going to tell you about today, that we invented a new family tradition, which is that we're going to write a poem. We're going to write a poem on Christmas Day. Do you know what a haiku is?
Yes, it's a very short Japanese poem.
It is 17 syllables in total, spread across 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables. I thought the Morgan Christmas Family Haiku competition. What do you think?
I love it.
If I create a good one, I'll let you know what it is. Okay?
I want to know what it is, even if it isn't good.
Yes, okay. And the other exciting thing, another highlight of the week, as you probably saw me say on Facebook, is that yesterday in the lunchtime post, which was a godsend, frankly, one of my old clients, she's not old, she's a former client and is now a friend. I opened up a parcel and it had one of those lovely little things which I love, those little net bags of Christmas golden chocolate coins, which, because I've been so busy this week in the end of term, it turned out to be my lunch yesterday, so it arrived just in time. God sent in 2 ways. Not only did it keep you going, sustain you through the day, but it gave you something to blog about. It did, yes. So chocolate coins, the Morgan family Christmas haiku, and the lovely sunny weather. They're my highlights of the week.
Marvellous. Well, this week for me, it's been all about the podcast, all about the podcast, all about the podcast, all about the podcast. I love
heavens. I love it too.
I don't know why it's so good, but it's just like really, really, I don't know, life affirming in some way.
Yes, it's fun. It's fun. Listen to us laugh. We're loving
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was a very bad song. And I thought, a singing rendition, I thought I was going wrong about the second time round. Then I thought, no, I'm in the groove now. I'm going to keep going one more time. I've been putting our podcast together, Judith, and oh my God, it's been such a joy. It really has. It's funny about podcasting because when I'm doing my own podcast, I'm so nervous. Especially when I have big name guests like, James Frampco, who's coming up on Christmas Day, I actually don't enjoy the actual process very much because I'm so terrified that I'm going to say something stupid, even though I know I'm going to be able to edit it out. Yeah. But doing ours was just a joy. And as you know, I'm trying to step up the production quality and put in lots of musical interludes and things inspired by the fabulous Startup podcast. And so I've been knocking about around our sponsors, Audio Jungle website. It's been so much fun sort of choosing the music, choosing the little sound effects, putting it all together. It's been a really creative endeavour for me.
And interestingly, you and I don't often have the same taste in music, but I love the ones that you've chosen.
Well, we wanted Sounds of Blackness, obviously. I'm going optimistic,
yes.
Or I'm going all the way. Would have been brilliant, but of course there's copyright issues, and it's funny because I'd kept this. The music we're using, I actually bought it a little while ago, and I kept it because it didn't really fit with my podcast, but I just liked it so much. I thought it's funky, it's female, it's groovy. I'll find a use for that somewhere. And then when I actually listened to the words of it, I thought that's absolutely perfect. It fits just right for the theme of this podcast.
Well, funky, female and groovy, say no more.
Exactly, right up our street.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the other thing that's been happening this week is the start of our mutual friend Andy's launch for his book. It's exciting because he's doing a proper launch process, and I haven't seen anyone do. And you know what he's like with spreadsheets the size of Asia. Ultimate detail, and I'm involved in the Facebook marketing side of it, so it's been really nice to work to a plan and know what's happening on what dates. Do you remember we used to do this with our launches?
Yes.
And have moving from one phase to the other and things. But the funny thing is about it is they've been doing a launch blog for all the joint venture partners who are mailing for them, and it's just Andy and Pete sitting in Andy's living room, and they read the leaderboard with the old, do you remember the top 20 chart music, and they do the whole leaderboard of who's, and I'm doing rather well, so I'm moving up and down the leaderboard, so it's actually really exciting every day to see where I come in the top 20. And I'm doing rather well with the marketing that I'm doing for them for Facebook, and I'm up there with Mind Valley and Mind Movies and all the big names, which is really very cool.
How cool!
Yeah, so that's quite something to look forward to every day. And of course they muck about something shocking with their British sense of humour, and I'm sure the Americans haven't got a clue what's going on. And the other thing was I had my second meeting with my potential new lawyer client, and that went rather well. It got more hardball on this one, as you would imagine.
Yes.
Because we started talking money, and she gave me some really marvellous feedback, that I'd gone in very brilliantly, with my video and professionally and everything, but I'd gone in quite, so you know what I'm like, I'm so enthusiastic. I'd sort of covered everything that I could do for her. And she just wanted to trim it back a bit to get going with some sort of test pilot scheme.
So what had been overwhelming for her, had it?
Well, she said it wasn't overwhelming. She said it was lovely, and it really made me realise how much you could do for us. But she said, obviously financially, it was a bit more than she wanted to do. She wanted to sort of get going more slowly, which I can totally understand. So we decided what the best thing to do for that would be. And then she sent me away to write it up and send her thing. I mean, it's been quite a drawn out, protracted event this so far, but I'm going with it because I really like her. Yeah. Compared with when clients come to your website and like the sound of you and read your blog and sign up, where we don't have much involvement in that really because it's all the work's been done. This is quite a drawn-out process, which I'm very impatient, and I'm finding a little frustrating. But I'm working on it because if I want to work with clients of this calibre, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen, isn't it? So that's my week, Judith.
Good.
What's fueled your fire then?
Oh, what's fueled my fire? Uptown Funk.
Oh, that is a great song, isn't it?
Uptown Funk, Bruno Mars and Mark Ronson. Julio, get the stretch. I mean, I love it, Nicola. Shall I tell you? I'm so pretty I could kiss myself. Is one of the
Oh, that's a great line, isn't it?
It's cool, but what I really like about it is first of all, obviously the up-tempo-ness of it, the sort of addictive. Pop music is, the best pop music is really addictive in the moment. The minute you hear it, you've got to hear it again.
Yeah.
So a couple of times yesterday, I saw one of my colleagues mention it on Facebook, so I went to YouTube and I put it on, and it just makes you feel so great. But what I really love about it is their attitude, which is kind of, the video's got overtones of the other great song that was with the horrible sexist lyric and video, Pharrell and what's his name?
Oh, I like that, you see.
Well, it's a great song. I love the song, okay, but the video and the lyrics were offensive. But this one has got overtones of that same cool. They even sit in the same position, so they sort of copy it a bit. But it's so much more elegant, sexy. But it's the attitude. The attitude is just infectious. And if I needed, it's the end of term, it's exhausting. If I need a little energy injection to get me through, it's Bruno and Mark.
The thing is, I haven't heard that version, so I'm now going to have to go and have a listen because.
Oh, my God, you wait till you see that. It's awesome.
Well, I know the song rather well because the Fleur East on X Factor did it twice really well, and it really so I love the song. She did an amazing version. You must go and see her version because she died.
I've seen her version twice. It was her version that turned me on, but this one is infinitely superior. She was fabulous. I agree with that song. That was the only song of hers I liked. But let's talk about the X Factor because I want to discuss that in another section.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, what's fueled my fire this week is Envato, which is the company that runs both Audio Jungle and PhotoJune. And I was put onto photojune.com. Yeah, I think so, by Justin Brooke. And when you think, remember we had that run-in with iStock Photo or who?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Getty Images we did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Thought we'd picked an image that was fine to use, and they came after us. And what we found out after paying them £1,000 was that actually they're bullies. They use unlicensed credit collectors, and they're actually well out of order to even remotely ask for money.
Can we just go back? Sorry, PhotoJune. How are you spelling the word June? Like the month?
Dune.
Oh, Dune. Okay, yeah. PhotoJune. Okay.
The thing I found about them, because I've been buying photos from iStock Photo, and they're actually rather expensive. And on Facebook ads, you need quite a large size, but it's the smallest size on PhotoJune. Yeah. Paying between $1 and $3 per picture per use. And the thing I like about it is the photos are so funky. They're modern, they're up to date, they're crisp, they're clean. And it really makes me feel quite inspired when I see cool pictures. So, and then I heard about Audio Jungle through, I can't remember, a podcaster. And I went to Audio Jungle only to find it was owned by the same people as PhotoJune. So, and again, I had a lovely time. They had it's easy to use, it's easy to navigate. Their search function is really sharp, it really works. They have little funny bits. So if you put in a search term that's too specific, they go, "Whoa, you're going out in the desert there. You better come back sometime." Things like that, which makes just little things like that just make your day more enjoyable, doesn't it?
Do you know what you just said? It's so funny. It stopped me when you noticed theme of the week. You said what you liked about it was that the photos were funky, and I picked the song Uptown Funk, and you said that our music was funky, female, and groovy. Notice, there's an F word there, which is beginning to form our theme of the week.
Nicola. We're dropping the F-bomb. I'm listening to way too many American podcasts. The F-bomb. Yeah, so Envato, very lovely company. I haven't even explored their other divisions, but I'm thoroughly enjoying using them and giving them my money. Right, client challenge of the week then, Judith.
Well, it's interesting because you just ended on saying how much you were enjoying paying money to somebody. And my client challenge of the week is pricing, how much to charge for oneself and one's services. And I've written here in my notes, I don't want cheap. I'm one of those people that doesn't want cheap. And the assumption when I'm working with my clients about how to charge for themselves and their time and their products is that because some of us have been through hard times in the last few years, that everybody wants cheap, and not everybody wants cheap. It's marvellous to be able to buy. But you just said, it's really interesting, you just said you were enjoying paying the money. People enjoy paying money for things.
Mm. Oh, obviously, Photogene photos are cheaper than iStock photo, but it's not even about that. It's about the fact their photos are better, their search engine's more efficient. The photos are funky when I find them. I would pay, 2 or 3 times more just as gladly, but they
Yeah.
actually are rather inexpensive. But it's interesting you say that because when I went through, when we closed the Money Gym and I decided I wanted to run a digital marketing agency, I went off and joined my local chamber and I got involved in a peer-to-peer mentoring group there. And we were all working on our businesses, and there were some really nice people there, and one's become a real friend ongoing. But I couldn't give it away in those days. I was offering to do internet marketing mentoring for my members of my peer mentoring group just to get some experience and get my systems set up and get some testimonials. Not one of them took me up on it. It's so interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we forget how far ahead of the beat we are.
Yes, you're always saying give them 2 years to catch up, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, at least.
But the fact that I was willing to do it for nothing, I think, made them not value it and think
I
it
agree.
couldn't be any good.
I agree. We like luxury things. We like expensive things. Some people, I mean, if we divided the world into a pie chart, there are very definitely people who like bargains. There will be people who will be buying next year's Christmas presents and next year's Christmas cards in the sales that begin on the 26th of December, and good on them, But I don't want cheap. I want something that's reassuringly expensive, and if I can't afford what I want, I don't want the cheap version. Now, that doesn't mean that at the moment I'm not offering myself at very keen prices because I have an eye on the world economy. But I see people charging hundreds, tens and hundreds times more than I do. So I know that whatever my clients choose to charge for themselves, there'll be a market. I'm thinking of a couple of people this week who've said to me things like, I say to them, so what are you worth? And they go, well, I love it so much I give myself away for free. And I go, well, that's great, that's lovely, but what are you worth? And eventually we get to a sum which is more than they're charging, but it's in their bodies and they know the answer to that question. They just don't want it to come out of their mouths. And I say, I promise I won't hold you to it. All sorts of disclaimers.
Yeah.
So that they can. And so I started with a lady who said, well, she charges £150 for a consultation where she goes round and she tells them it'll be an hour, but she obviously takes 2 because she's enjoying herself.
And travelling time.
And I said, and by the time you get in the car and you deal with various hassles on the way and you find some legal parking and you come home and you type up your notes and you send it through and you receive a query from them, why are you charging them 150 quid? What's it really worth? And after a lot of poking about, she said 500. I went, yeah, that's right. And
that's what I'd have said as well, 500. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Because she lavishes care and attention on them and she gives them something incredibly powerful. And she says, oh, but I love it so much I do it for free. Yes, but the right sort of clients you're trying to get on the end of your fishing pole with your 500 initial consultation are people who will value your time, and therefore when they go on to be proper clients, will treat you with respect and you'll be able to charge properly. And everybody knows this. I have to talk them all up from giving it away, although we both know there's times when you might want to do that. Giving it away to undercharging, to charging what you're worth. We even had a conversation where somebody said, I give mates rates. Yes, marvellous. What do you do? 50% off. 50% off? Surely 20% off is enough for a mates rate. We're all so weird about money. That's my point, I think.
It puts people off too because, let's talk in a minute about your pay what you want thing, because I've experimented with that as well. I know you're having more success with it than I did, I think. But it actually makes people feel uncomfortable if they want to hire you and you either don't let them hire you, you make it so difficult for them to actually do that, or that you make it impossible for them to pay you. They might sort of uncomfortably take advantage of you the first time, as they would feel, but they won't come back. So it's really is better to start charging something, even if you're not massively comfortable with it, and then work up gradually. But there's a thing in itself, is it? So we both know someone who's done an amazing offer to get her business going, and she's now putting her rates up quite dramatic, well, doubling her rates from 1st of January. And I feel that it would have been perhaps better to ease them up gradually, month by month, or for new clients? How do you think is a good way to handle that? If you start off really low, you get the business, how do you then edge it up?
I think two thoughts have come to mind immediately. The person who shall not be named that we're talking about started so cheaply, I think doubling is fine. But if it were my own clients, I think that over the initial period, say 3 years, while they're getting used to charging what they're really worth, I would nudge it up as often as I dared. So, because until you reach a platform, a ceiling where you feel most people buy most of the time and you're comfortable with that. And that takes quite a long time when you're starting a business. And then after that, once you've reached that point where you know it's right, and then I would encourage them, depending on what they're selling, to have an annual or a biannual price increase. So everybody knows your prices go up on the 1st of January or the 1st of September or your birthday or whatever it is. But I think there's a lot of experimentation. In fact, I was explaining to a client this week how when I started my accountancy business, I was quite a young woman. I was only 22 in the 1980s. About 3 years in, we were full up. But potential clients would still phone. And that gave me the opportunity to experiment with doubling and quadrupling my prices over the phone. And what I discovered, when I couldn't take on any more, or I didn't want to take on the person on the phone, and so there was no scarcity at all, if I doubled my prices and quadrupled my prices, they still bought. And so that gave me a barometer by which I could measure whether or not we were charging enough.
Yeah, but I'm a client of this person, and when I got the email that said that was happening on the 1st of January, I felt it physically like a slap. And there's a whole separate discussion here as well, because I've got an agency and I'm going to hire, this client's going to hire me for X amount a month. And I'm going to have to make up my mind when I raise my rates. Well, I've got a bit of a cushion built in the fact that it's 25% of ad spend or X amount minimum. So if she does end up spending more, I will end up earning more, which is great. Yeah. I feel that when you raise your prices, and my hairdresser resists this as well, I say to her, if you want to raise it 10% a year, isn't it better to do it quarterly and it's 2.5% a quarter, which nobody would even notice, but rather than doing 10%, once a year? And as I say, perhaps I felt that perhaps this person should have doubled her rates for new clients, but then perhaps eased existing clients up to that new rate over the next year. I don't know how you think about that.
I think because you're a big user of this supplier, it would have a bigger impact on you than it would on me. I'd be more happy paying. Well, there you go. I rest my case. What did I say? I don't want cheap. I'd be more happy paying her new rate because I think that's closer to what she should be charging. And even you and I know that doubling it isn't close to what she's worth.
For certain things, but then there is the argument that I could go and find a Filipino VA and train her to do the work.
Well, this argument comes up all of the time. And if that's what you want, if you're that price sensitive to that purchase, then go and find a Filipino VA.
Yeah, but then I'd have to train them, wouldn't I? And supervise them, whereas I don't have to do any of that.
No, exactly. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, good point. So you feel that if someone's charging and they've got a bunch of existing clients, they should just be bold and say, on the 1st of January, I'm putting my price up and this is what it's going to be.
Well, in my case, I put it up this year on the 1st of August after having held it for, 1st of September, I beg your pardon, which is the go back to school day after having held it for 20 months. And in that particular, that's my middle group, the Club 100. I think I could review it every 1st September. But actually now I'm charging the right sum of money for it, so it only needs to go up by the retail price index factor.
And what about your existing clients in that club?
The existing clients I kept the same because the offering there is whatever price you get in at is your price for life.
Yes. Yeah, to your grandfathered in, as they call it.
Exactly. Oh, nice expression, yes. If they drop out and come back, they pay the prevailing rate.
Yeah, which is a good thing for encouraging stickiness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See that,
and also I feel it's fair. I have a relationship with them. You can't move. I don't think you can move the terms on existing. In that case, it's members really. If they were clients, one-to-one clients, I would put it up because you're putting up your general rate. But if you've got a membership, I've always thought this about memberships, you don't want to embroil yourself in the changing of everybody's standing order.
No, absolutely. Yeah, the grief is not worth the
no, exactly.
Yeah. So, but you don't feel that about service and if you're one-to-ones.
No, I don't. No, because it's a bit like if I go back to my own accountancy business, for instance, we had different rates of staff. We were charging 25, 50 and £100 an hour or something. Once a year, you put those up. Otherwise, inflation erodes the value of that. So they can't buy as much. We can't buy as much with what £100 erodes, doesn't it, in value?
Yeah.
So you've got to put that up to 105 or 110 once a year. And then, whatever the retail price index is, I don't know, it's 3% or something like that. But £103 an hour is a silly sum of money. So you put it up to 105 or 110. Yeah. And money is just specific to every single person. We don't have much common ground, even you and I, not me and my clients. How I spend my money is unique.
Yes, you've blogged about this on many occasions, haven't you?
Yeah.
Like, my thing is, I'm very happy to spend on software and training and mentoring, but I've been looking at my kettle for the last 3 years, thinking I really should buy a new one, and I just can't bring myself to spend 50 quid on a new kettle.
Does it boil water?
It does, yes.
I don't need to hear any more about this.
But it looks ugly. So this is where my aesthetic sense comes in, and at some point,
I understand. I understand, but the world is full of junk already, Nicola. Where does your old kettle go that works perfectly well? It goes up the civic tip and just creates landfill problems.
Yes, yeah. So have we covered pricing fairly thoroughly, or is there something?
I think we have. But I think it's a topic that we'll return to over the months, don't you?
Yeah, probably. Let's just finish on the pay what you want model, because I think we should just cover that before we do. I tried that, and I was paid anything for a product that I'd previously been selling for $500. I was paid anything from $10 to $50 was the most I got for it, even though I made very clear that it had been selling for $500 previously. And so I sort of gave up in disgust, really. But you said something very interesting I was listening to you on Natural Born Coaches the other day, your interview, and you said something very interesting on that, which was that if you're going to go with the pay what you want model, you have to have not a shred of scarcity around it.
That's it. You have to be 100% aligned that whatever anybody gives you is wonderful.
Yes, and I think perhaps I should have tried it with a new product that I hadn't actually priced at all, because then you'd be able to use it to test your pricing, wouldn't you?
Well, I think there's two ways of looking at this actually. So in my own example, when I haven't had time to do it in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been so busy, but when I put every morning on my Facebook page that I have a spare slot later in the day, and people may take it on a pay what you want basis, what I'm doing is selling something which would normally be an hour where I would sit here and make no money at all. Now, I don't use the online diary for the pay what you want. So when I wake up in the morning, if there's a spare slot, I advertise it on my Facebook page. I say there's a spare slot today at 1400 GMT. Anybody want it? PM me, private message me on Facebook. And then, so what happens then is anything I receive for that is bunts.
Okay, so people PM you, and then you send them the link to pay what you want after or before?
Either.
Okay.
So all I need is their Skype name. They know what the rules are because I've publicised what the rules are, and the rules give them a guideline of what people typically pay for those sessions, anything between 40 and 150 quid. 30 and 150 quid. 40, 50 and 75 is quite common, and it always comes with a note saying, I know you're worth more than this, which is very nice. But the point of this is I'm selling something which would sit on the shelf because nobody else can buy it.
And you said something really interesting, which was also on the interview, which was that you have to spell out for people what other people typically pay, because if left to themselves, they wouldn't book it because they'd be paralysed on making a decision.
Well, for the moment, because the pay what you want model is relatively unknown, you and I both know. In fact, it was your sister that pointed us at the first ever resource, and it was a website designer in the States. You have to guide people initially, because what you and I both know is if we give people infinite choice, they don't make a decision at all. It's too overwhelming. So you have to give people a bracket between, a guideline so that they know how to pay you. But ultimately, my goal with Pay What You Want is, and my experience certainly with my ebooks, is people pay more. So typically, following the Ryan Dice model, one would sell one's ebook on Kindle for £2.99. If I offer it from my own website for a Pay What You Want, the average payment is £6.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's interesting.
And but the thing is that you taught me, of course, and depending, how much personal involvement is involved in your product, is that you give people, you can test it, can't you? You can test. The thing about the pay what you want is it's completely surprising. So it's a bit like a nice surprise. After you finish the call, I point them at the donate button on my website, and something comes in, and you go, oh, that's nice.
Have you ever had anyone not send anything?
Yes, when I offered one of my ebooks on this basis on Selz, I don't know if you know Selz, SELZ, a platform for selling digital products. Several people bought it for nothing, and you have to go, ho hum, they probably need it for nothing. But you can't bitch, excuse my language, about what you receive because you've offered it on a pay what you want basis. So it's a real test for us because you've got to be totally flatline aligned. You can't have any peak or trough reaction to the sum of money that comes in because that's against the whole point of it.
Yeah.
But the other thing that Guy Levine taught me way back is even if somebody's bought my ebook for nothing, it's got my URL all over it. They might share it with a friend. It's doing marketing for you as it goes around the world for free.
It's a pebble in the pond, and you don't know what ripple's going to happen, but a ripple will happen.
Exactly.
A word from our sponsors. This week's episode was sponsored by Audio Jungle. To get some immediate atmosphere for your website or your recordings, go to ownitthepodcast.com/Audio Jungle. So Judith, word of the week this week is podcast. How you decided you wanted to do more podcasting, and then we'll go from there.
I like audio. I've listened to some of our earlier episodes a couple of times. I've listened to myself talking to Mark Mawini of Natural Born Coaches a couple of times, and I've listened to some of my small business big magic calls this week as well because the clients were saying they're good. Because I spend my time talking to clients and listening to clients unrecorded, I don't really know what happens in those conversations. So to go back and listen to the audios, you and I have said this before, I listen, I think, God, who is that clever woman? And then I realise it's me. I find that's very reinforcing because we're all not sure of who we are, what impact we make in the world. I forget what I know until a client asks me. But also I just love audio, Nicola. I don't listen to many podcasts as it happens, but if you gave me a choice, I'd prefer to read, number one. I'd prefer to listen, number two. And if you show me a video, I'm not going to play.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a very visual person, but I am massively into podcasts now because they don't have any adverts, obviously. But because Sarah's in New Zealand and there's nobody else here most of the time. I've started listening to podcasts as almost like a radio, as you would a radio.
Yes.
And I'm thoroughly enjoying that. So I obviously have my other podcast, which is where I interview successful entrepreneurs, and a right range of them I get too, which is marvellous. But
I tell you what you have made me realise, actually, when I was listening to ours, and there's one other I subscribe to as well, what I realised was exactly what you said, which is the more we get into delivering podcasts, the more likely I am to subscribe to some and listen to more.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you said that you wanted to do more podcasting, and I had been thinking about looking for someone to do a podcast, because I realised that all the podcasts I like to listen to are people having a conversation, two people having a conversation. So then, obviously you were the obvious choice because we've always enjoyed gassing, haven't we?
Yes, exactly.
And, decided what we wanted to cover, and it came together very quickly, didn't it? We just
did. All the best ideas do, don't they?
Yeah, and I was thinking that when I was editing it, this is really in my flow. This is, the recording of it, the editing of it, it's all really in my flow. I love it.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that because you are carrying the bulk of that, obviously.
It's just so enjoyable, and it's something I feel I could do until I drop.
Oh, that's great to hear. I know you'll change your mind in later life, but for now, that's fabulous.
Let's just run through it, for everyone else. The reason I got really turned on to them initially was when I listened to John Lee Dumas's and I went to Entrepreneur on Fire and I saw what kind of income he was making from his sponsorship of the podcast. and he does a daily podcast. So obviously the traditional sponsorship model is all based around the thousands of downloads per episode. And when you're doing a daily show, you obviously got 7 times what someone who's doing a weekly show would have as a download. So your sponsor is getting 7 times the exposure. The pricing model is changing on sponsorship. It's getting more to the point of what the sponsor thinks it's worth paying to get in front of your audience, because you might have a smaller audience. For example, us, we're going to start with hopefully we'll hit new and noteworthy and get lots of subscribers there. But we're going to have a very tightly targeted bunch of subscribers, which are going to be largely women working from home in the creative, digital and sort of admin, finance industries, I suppose. Yeah, that would sort of sum it up, wouldn't it? A lot of your clients are very creative, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yeah,
and lots of mine are very digital.
But you know what you've just said, don't you? You've just said the podcasting model is moving towards pay what you want, i.e., what the sponsor considers our audience is worth to him.
Yes, or what we consider our audience is worth to the sponsor. Yeah. And then I started listening to podcasts. I don't know how. I think I just decided it would be a good idea to start listening to some positive stuff before I went to sleep. I'm completely hooked on. So to the point where I think there's not enough hours in every day for the podcasts I want to listen to. It almost makes you want to get a car and start driving about so I can actually listen to things in the car.
Well, actually, that's my problem. I only do anything when I'm driving.
Yeah, and funnily enough, that's how I used to keep up to date with pop music. So bringing the whole thing in a really rather neat circle there. Except we've still got our who or what's impressed this week section.
Well, you haven't asked me about my word of the week. Am I not allowed a word of the week?
Yes, you do. You get a word of the week.
Of
course you do.
Okay, so my word of the week is accountability.
Oh.
I'll keep it short, Nicola. Why do we need accountability? Why isn't our own word enough for us? So, by which I mean, why won't I go to the gym by myself, but I will if I've got a buddy or a personal trainer?
That's very interesting, isn't it? Because I'm not someone who needs accountability, because I write my plan and I generally largely stick to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yes. But a lot of clients want accountability. And the thing I've discovered, the other thing is, if you set up a meeting to do something, it's much more likely to happen, isn't it? So there's the thing about
like our meetings, isn't it, for our podcasts? We know we've got to prepare for them, and we're there on the dot, and we're ready.
Yes, and but yes, and I think if it was left to me, and my other podcast, Sarah organises all the interviews for me. And if it was left to me to organise those interviews, it simply wouldn't happen.
Well, that's because that sort of admin puts you off, and you know that about yourself, which is why you've involved Sarah. But Marion has got an expression. She always denies it, which probably means she borrowed it from somebody else. But she says, and this is a good time of year to be thinking about things like this, because we're thinking about, January and New Year's resolutions and plans for 2015. Marion's expression is an unbreakable promise to yourself.
That's a really nice one, isn't it?
So don't pay lip service to something that you're not prepared to make an unbreakable promise to yourself about. Don't say, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to go to the gym, or I'm going to double my turnover. If you're not fully committed, and if you're fully committed, you don't really need accountability. I mean, some of my clients, I know they need it, and they say that they want it, but I'm slightly confused by this, because does that mean they're running businesses they're not particularly interested in? Unless I beat them with a stick, they're not going to do it. Or is it that they need some help through the difficult stuff? Or is it that they haven't really chosen something, the way you just described podcasting in your flow? Is it that they haven't chosen something that they love so much they don't need accountability? I mean, I don't want to talk myself out of business, but I don't really understand this need. I suppose it's because I'm on fire.
Yeah, you're an entrepreneur on fire, as John Lee Dumas would say.
Yeah.
The other thing is about motivation and inspiration. I was motivated to get a podcast going again when I saw John Lee Dumas's sponsorship figures, but that's not what's kept me going. What's kept me going is the fact that I'm motivated to carry on doing podcasting, and in fact start a new one with you, because I feel inspired by the medium, by the creativity of editing, by the fact that you can get on iTunes and go out to millions of people in 89 countries my other podcast is going to now. So I think it has to start with inspiration, which then provides motivation. And then it's just a question of putting some sort of system or structure in place to provide the accountability.
Yeah, I think you're half right, I think, from my perspective. I'm not saying you're wrong. I think that, so for instance, I will never be motivated or make an unbreakable promise to myself to go to the gym. But when I had a personal trainer for 18 months, I went. But so motivation, I need motivation around something I don't want to do. If it's something I want to do, I don't need any motivation or any accountability because I'm inspired.
Yes, and you just get on and do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Can't stop me. Keep me away from it, you know.
So when you think about some of the clients that come, say they want accountability, then do you think it's just that they're not organised enough to put a structure in place that gives them accountability to themselves, and that's what they're looking externally for accountability because it provides some sort of structure?
I don't know, Nicola. Is there a way in which our listeners can let us know?
Well, yes, there is. If they go to ownitthepodcast.com and
leave a comment,
click the pink bar on the right-hand side with where it says "Ask your burning question," you could, instead of asking a burning question, you could tell us your feelings about accountability, motivation, and inspiration. We'd love to hear.
And isn't there a comment facility under each blog podcast as well?
Yes, there is. Yes, so this will be 004. Ownitthepodcast.com. Look for episode OI, which is Own It, 004, and comment on the episode. That would be really cool. We'd love to.
Yeah, we want to know why you need accountability,
or even indeed your thoughts about pricing, which is what else we've been talking about.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So what's impressed you this week then?
Michelin-starred restaurant Chez Bruce.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, so what happened was my best friend had her 50th birthday this year, and some of her friends gave her a £70 voucher to spend at Chez Bruce. And I'd forgotten all about it, actually, and I certainly didn't presume that I would be the friend who would be taken. But she said to me about a week ago, would you like to go to Chez Bruce on Sunday? And actually, I made the answer to that faster than I did when you invited me on a podcast. It was another example of do bears shit in the woods. But what I want to tell you is, because I know about restaurants. I used to be an accountant to a lot of top-class and Michelin-starred restaurants and restaurateurs. And I've been to Chez Bruce a lot. Indeed, I've worked with Bruce. But, as I said to you when you told me about your children working in the hospitality industry, it is very, very physically demanding and hard work. And if it looks gorgeous at the front end, just like a swan, it belies how much frantic swimming is going on underneath the water that we can't actually see. But I would say that it was one of the nicest experiences, leave dining out of this for the moment, it was one of the nicest customer service experiences I've ever had. We were early, which was really annoying. We stood in the hall and cluttered up their operating space, much against my better judgment. But we were eventually seated at 2:30 in the afternoon, and every single member of staff was charming. In particular, our waiter. I've had to write a letter to Bruce to say how brilliant it was, but our waiter, English not first language, but utterly charming, sense of humour, nothing too much trouble. I left my car keys accidentally inside my coat, which they'd taken away. I got up to go and fetch them. He said, "What do you need, madam?" He went off to fetch them for me. Because I know what it takes, because I know how hard it is, and because it's all about the training, and as I say to you often, just like films and theatre, very, very dependent on people, and not much is anymore. To be in a sort of delicious, charming, relaxing, elegant, gorgeous in every way scenario is worth, we're back to pricing again, it's worth top dollar. Yeah. And I said to my friend Nicola, my friend, as you know, is also called Nicola, coming away, I would rather spend £90, which is what we did between two, obviously 70 quid off, so it cost us £20. I'd rather spend £90 going to somewhere like that less often than all the money we waste at cheaper places. And the business relevance of this is a restaurant, relies on human being. And if we go back to the E-myth, it's all about the training. There's a training manual about how you do things, how you serve customers, and your attitude towards them. Whatever they're paying those waiters isn't enough, because they're trained within an inch of their life to make sure that my experience is absolutely gorgeous in every way. And if I may just close on my particular bugbear, what they get right at posh restaurants that they don't at naff ones is the easiest trick which any waiter could learn. Nobody ever needs to come to the table with 2 plates of food and say who's having the fish, because when the waiter takes the order, he just puts a little mark on the pad to say it's either the blonde or the brunette or the man or the woman or the one with their backs against the wall. No, in a posh restaurant, nobody ever comes with 2 plates and says, macaroni, and you're supposed to claim it, They just know who ordered which, and it goes down in front of you seamlessly. You and I have been to some nice places together, and it just feels luxurious to be looked. I know we can't all afford, sometimes I might have a tin of baked beans, and once a year, as a special treat, because of my friend's birthday voucher, we might spend £90 at Shaveries, and I know which I prefer, Nicola. You can keep your fast food. I'd rather save up for this gorgeous. It's not even about the food, as I keep saying. It's about this customer service experience where you're made to feel like a princess.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm very keen at all times to be made to feel like a princess.
Yes, you were born a princess, obviously, I know that.
Well, I'm just thinking of my daughter who I saw this week. Obviously it's Christmas lunch season, and Phoebe works in one of the best gastropubs in the town, and she's on restaurant duty now as well because she's worked her way up to that. And as I was going out of the pub, I just popped in to see her briefly yesterday. There were about 20 Korean people coming in with one British person accompanying them, because we've got Ricardo's down the road, and they do get it's a big engineering company, international, and they do get an awful lot of foreign engineers coming to stay and work there. And I just felt for Phoebe, because she would have a hard job making a note on the thing as it goes into the kitchen. It's the Korean one.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yes, I thought. Well, good point, well made. If you've got a booking for 20 people, you probably can't do that. Yes.
It's the Korean one with the glasses. No, it's the Korean one without the glasses.
Exactly.
Bless them. They were all so excited as well, but not. She said afterwards, not one of them spoke English, so she had to do it all through. Who's having the turkey?
Yeah, were they all coming for the turkey special?
They were. Yeah.
The British Christmas experience. How funny!
It was very funny. It made me laugh a lot. Awesome. So what's impressed me this week, apart from my daughter coping with 20 Koreans, is a podcast that I'm faithfully. I mean, it's just amazing. Well, let's start with James Schramko, right? Either my Christmas or my New Year episode of my own podcast is where I interview James Schramko. Now, James is a boy who was brought up in a nice middle-class family in Sydney, and he went off he did all sorts of sales jobs, but he's one of those people who's a born salesman, and he's got absolutely no lack of self-confidence whatsoever. But the thing that I really enjoyed about interviewing him is he thinks very differently to everyone else, and he thinks he's almost like a business machine, Judith, but not in a nasty way or anything. He's just got no emotions around it all that I could discern. I don't know whether that's come to him over the years or whatever, but he was one of the highest paid Mercedes dealerships in Sydney, and he learned to sell from a brilliant mentor apparently, who was absolutely completely bonkers but taught him lots. James has got no less than 5 podcasts on the go, as well as a business called Superfast Business. Anyway, once I'd interviewed him, I heard a lot about him in the past, because he was the first person to roll up all his products into one membership site. Basically, you can't buy any of James's products singly now. You have to join his membership site for, I think it's either $79 or $97 a month, and then once in, you get all of his product. But so that was an interesting business model to start with. But when I interviewed him, I really got it's almost like a gravitas. He's got a gravitas that you don't come across very often. He speaks in a really nice, measured way. He thinks about his answers, and when he answers your questions, they're not at all what you expect, the answers, which I loved a lot, as you can imagine. And since then, I've gone and stalked all his podcasts. And the one he does particularly, because he is known as this business machine, is one called Think, Act and Get, because what you think about affects how you act, and how you act affects what you get. But he's doing it with one of his own students called Ezra Firestone. What a great name is that? Yes, I love it. A great name, yes. And Ezra grew up in a hippie commune in California somewhere. And he is very touchy-feely woo-woo, I suppose you'd call him, and he talks about things that make James laugh a lot, because they're such different characters, and it's a real inspiration for this show for us, really, because James finds a lot of things that Ezra says really, really funny, and vice versa, and they discuss their different attitudes to things, and there's something like 58 episodes, and I'm working through them. Every night I'm listening to a new one, but of course the next night I've fallen asleep halfway through the first one, so I have to go back and listen to the second half of the first one. So it's going to take me 100 nights to catch up, I think. But then I'll be bereft, because of course I'll have to wait once a week for a new episode, which will be quite tragic. So I'm in that situation when you've got a lovely book and you don't want it to finish.
I do.
I'm in that situation with Tag, the podcast.
Now, you've actually given me 3 ideas in that little thing, which we won't discuss today, but I've made notes and I need to talk to you about all of them.
Oh, how exciting. Well, that's us for today then, Judith. Thanks very much for joining me today. And listeners, if you've enjoyed this, go to ownitthepodcast.com and look for episode 004. And we'd love to see your comments and have your questions on our SpeakPipe recording thingy. Goodbye then.
Bye, Nicola.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.